Hello, my name is Devin Weckerly, and welcome to the new WRMU program, Mount Union Marvels. I am joined here today by a new face to the Mount Union family, Dr. Melinda Johnson. She has just joined the communication department, and I am so glad to have her in as my first WRMU Mount Union Marvels interviewee. Dr. Johnson, thank you so much for coming in and speaking with me today.
You're welcome. It was an honor to be asked.
So one of my very first questions would be, how did you choose Mount Union? How did you get here?
Mount Union chose me. I was actually at a national communication conference, and they have, job opportunities kind of posted, and they have a big event during one of those days where they have universities from all over that promote what job opportunities they have. And I was walking through and I saw a beautiful purple flyer, ironically enough, and it talked about health common interpersonal. And after reading that over and a wonderful conversation with Dr. Capuzza, who's the chair of the department, I instantly fall in love. We had a great conversation. There was really great rapport. And so I went back to Wisconsin and told my husband all about it. And then I got the phone call to come on in and an interview. And as soon as I stepped foot on the ground, I was like, yep, I'm home. I need to come here. So it was just a really great opportunity, and a bunch of really great opportunities kind of lined up for me to get here.
And you came at a perfect time as well. You currently have a major project that you're working on, so if you could tell the listeners a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So my area of research is in health communication. Specifically, I'm interested in STD and HIV prevention. I've been working in this field for, say, about 8 years now, but my love for talking about how we talk about safe sex education and STD and HIV prevention has really stemmed from all the way back when I was 17 years old. I was president of Teen City Council. I got to put together a really great panel to talk to parents about how you talk to your teens about sex and those types of issues. And I remember sitting on that stage with a panel of psychologists and doctors and counselors and principals. And then, there were 12 of them and me. And I looked at them and I looked at this audience. I said, I'm a kid. But what I can tell you is that just telling kids and teenagers not to do something only ramps up this idea that they should do it. So I kind of created this metaphor of, sex education is a plate of warm, ooey gooey cookies. And if I put these cookies out in front of you and I say, don't do that, don't touch them, don't do that, and I walk away, your whole body knows what that is and has this, can smell it and can sense it. And like every part of your body's like, do it. It's so good. Do it. And because I just told you not to, you're more likely going to do it. However, if I took that same plate of cookies and I told you, don't eat these cookies because if you do, bad things could potentially happen to you. You could grow an appendage that is going to be a part of you for 18 years that is going to be very expensive. You could have itchy, burny things happen to you, or a random bunch of other things. It's going to change how you see your own body. It's going to change how you see every single relationship for the rest of your life. It's going to change lots and lots of different things. And then I walk away. The chances are you're going to look at those cookies a completely different way now. And you're more than likely not going to want to touch them. So I think sex education can kind of be that same way. If abstinence-only programs are just telling us, don't do this, it's not really going to work. If we give more comprehensive information, why don't I want to do this? For the health aspects, that's going to be really important. So flash forward back to today, I really want to work on ways that we rupture the narrative and how we talk about sex in our culture, especially from the health perspective. We tend to use illness as punishment in the popular media, and that's really what I'm actually working on right now. I'll be presenting a paper called Illness as Punishment, Safe Sex Representations in Primetime Media. And it looks at how, if you look at our media, anytime these issues are talked about outside of like a Grey's Anatomy or Private Practice, they weave them in a little bit better. But even they fall short on this idea of they only show it as punishment. The people that are coming in will use language like, oh, I'm going to be punished for this. And if you get everyone thinking, well, I'm just going to get this illness as a punishment, that's going to increase stigma. That's going to increase people not wanting to go get tested. That's going to increase people treating other people differently because of the way that we talk about it. And I think that's a big problem. In other countries, it's not a big deal. In other countries, college students, they'll carry around condoms because it's a way of protecting myself. It's my body. I want to make sure that I'm protected. If and so I choose to engage in that behavior, I want to make sure that I'm protected. It shouldn't be anybody else's responsibility but my own. And they can talk about it more freely. Here, carrying around protection means something. There's a stigma to that. Only certain people do that, in air quotes. And I don't think that that's very healthy. We should all be able to talk about illness, whether it's STIs and HIV, whether it's mental illness. There's a whole gamut of illnesses that people suffer from and have to handle, and they don't get the support that they need. And I think we really need to change how we talk about illness in this country.
I think you are completely right.
Thanks.
Coming from a college student, I see that culture as well, and I hear the things that are talked about, especially, in bigger groups, larger groups where that topic comes up a lot. Now, you said that you had been interested in this since you were a teenager, but being a professor at a college campus, has that added a new dimension to how you look at this problem? Has it swayed your opinions or your ways of thinking about this issue?
Yeah, because I hear again and again from students that they're not at risk. There's this really strong, and this again comes from the media, that we only show certain types of people at risk. Very rarely in the media do you ever see the average college student engage, go to a party, and we know you party, and we know things happen as much in my wonderful world. All of my students are sweet little angels that never do anything, and none of my research applies to them. The reality is 1 in 3 college students, and this is nationally, the CDC says that 1 in 3 college students will get an STD and might have an STD right now.
Wow.
So if we had 2 students in this room, one of you would at some point this year get an STD. So the reality is college students are engaging behaviors. There's drinking, there's a newfound freedom, there's all the parties and, Thirsty Thursday, wonderful things like that. Again, none of you, my Mount Union students, none of you are engaged in this, of course, in my head. But the reality is a lot of students are. So I'm seeing it. And then when I have these conversations with students, they're like, oh, no. I don't do any of that. I'm not at risk for this. Well, the fact is very simple. If you are having unprotected sex, you're at risk. Simple. STDs and HIV or STIs, the more formal version, they don't care who you are. They don't care what your background is. They don't care how wealthy you are or the skin color or any of that. If you put yourself in a risky situation, you've got the chance that that's going to happen to you. So if we can talk about it, and you can talk to your doctors about it, and you can talk to other adults about it, and you can get the information that you need on how to protect yourself, that's going to make it all so much easier. And so I want to make it easier.
I think it needs to be a whole lot easier, especially when I was in, even as early as middle school, they had that big assembly where they talk about those sorts of issues, and they show you pictures, they tell you what can happen, and it's a whole big scare tactic. But like you had said, the solution to that was them saying, don't engage in those behaviors. And I don't think that sets up a healthy mindset. It sets up a fear dynamic. I think the fear aspect creates an unhealthy view of, those types of behaviors. And it ends up being a bad situation for everyone who has those views.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, if I say that certain people are engaging in behaviors and you shouldn't do them because it's very scary and I'm making you fear it, the likelihood of you being judgmental or afraid of the people that do get it is going to be increased. The other problem with that, and I'm teaching a health communication class this spring, and one of the things that we'll talk about this is that when you are trying to do interventions or promotion of health, yes, scare tactics work to get people's attention, but that's it. I scare you and then I walk away. Well, I need to give you more information. I need to scare you and then tell you how to fix it. Give you the tools that you need. It's called, creating self-efficacy. If you don't think that you can do this on your own, you're not going to do it. But if I can get your attention, and maybe it is a scare tactic. That's what my parents did to me. My mom brought home a book and said, this is what gonorrhea looks like. And it was the nastiest thing I had ever seen. And she's like, this is what will happen to you if you have unprotected sex. And she had my attention. Then she shut the book and said, okay, here's why I don't want you to engage in these behaviors yet. You're not old enough. We think that we're old enough when we're late teens, early 20s. Yeah, you're not. I was a completely different person from when I started my undergraduate degree to when I finished it. And I, did some stupid things in college. Everybody does. But I also was very protective, and I made sure that any situation I put myself in, I was in control and I knew what was going on. I made good health decisions for myself along the way. And I think that I knew that I could do that because my parents sat me down and had really open, honest conversations. We're not having those. And the fact that you had that assembly in itself is actually a win, because oftentimes they get nothing.
That's true.
So I was like, yay, you had the assembly. It didn't totally work, but at least you had it. If I scare you and I just walk away, have you really learned anything? Are you really able to take that with you? Or are you just going to remember, oh yeah, I was scared once. Okay, how about I scare you and then I say, okay, here's how we deal with this. Here's what I want you to remember. Here's where you go to get help. Here's where you can help yourself. And here's how to negotiate that help when you need it.
Right. And I think especially among the younger college students, like I'm a senior, so I've kind of been through that coming of age, growing, whatever you want to call it. But there's a sense of invincibility.
Yes. Absolutely.
With younger college students, there's that sense nothing can happen to me, especially on a college campus where you still have the feeling of safety. You're not out into the real world yet, but you're gaining so much freedom, but you're still in a community that cares about you. So while that is a good thing, while you want to feel safe and you want to feel like there's a sense of community, you still need to be aware that there's all these people that you don't know. You are meeting so many new people who could potentially have, like you said, 1 in 3 college students. And people don't have those conversations before they engage in that behavior. They don't ask, hey, I want to be in a relationship with you that could involve some physical things. They don't want to, they're too embarrassed to say, hey, will you go get tested with me? Will you tell me a little bit about your history so that we can like save this relationship or like get rid of all those issues?
And to me, if you can't have that conversation, you shouldn't be engaging in the behavior.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's just so silly. It's like, if you can't talk about sex, why are you doing it? Oh my goodness. The other part of this, that invincibility that you were talking about, there are studies all over the world that have found that there are certain age demographics that feel that they are invincible. It's always going to happen to those people, never me. And the other thing is that my husband just posted this on Facebook, and if you want, I can get you the link. But it was this thing where you put in if you're male or female, and then you put in the number of partners you've had. And it calculates, averaging, how many people that means you've been exposed to. Because, okay, sure, I've only, let's say I've only had relations with 4 people in my whole life, right? Those 4 people have also been in contact with other people. And the people that they were in contact had relations with other people. And, even though, there are people like, oh, well, they look clean, or I know them, and these are things. I have a wonderful poster on my campus door that's about getting tested for STDs and things like that. And it's all of these really great quotes. It's like, well, they look clean. Well, I would hope so, because if they look dirty and gross and you are still going to engage in behaviors with them, then okay. Or, well, I know them. Well, do you know every other person that they've also been with? Because that kind of, if you think about it, leaves a thumbprint on you. Every time someone touches you, there's a thumbprint on you. And you need to know what those thumbprints say and what they are. Because even though you can't see anything, it could still be a dirty thumbprint that we want to make sure that we are washing off and are protecting ourselves on.
I love all of your metaphors. Can I just say that
queen of metaphors.
It is fantastic. First the cookie, and then the dirty thumbprint. It is amazing.
Take classes with Dr. J and learn the wonderful world of metaphors.
Now, you'd also mentioned in my research class that you have a couple papers out for review. Are you able to talk about
absolutely.
The topics that there are?
Yes. They're all kind of centered on the same idea, but 2 of the papers that are out for review right now, one is looking at which conversations young adults do have and which conversations are impacting when students decide to get tested for STIs and HIV and when they do not get tested for STIs and HIV. And which conversation is it that helps a student decide, yes, I need to do this, or no, I don't. And I'm really interested in this whole idea of everyday interpersonal communication. I mean, as a communication professor, it works. But the other thing was, it shouldn't just be the conversations that we have with parents. It shouldn't just be the conversations that we have that are professional with counselors or with teachers and things like that, because students, or just anybody in general, it's the everyday simple conversations that oftentimes have the biggest impact. It may not be something I say in class, but if I have a conversation with a student just kind of at random, that's going to be the conversation that might stick a little bit better. So I was interested in, okay, well, what kind of conversations are people having? Are they talking about it at all? And generally, everyone said that, yeah, they've had some kind of conversation. They feel the most comfortable talking with their peers. And then when it came to actually testing, they ranked that they felt doctors were pretty high, but it wasn't the highest in terms of, quantitatively, so numerically. Peers were the number one that they felt the most comfortable talking about these things with. Okay, great. Well, if your peers are all just as novice about these things as you are, that's not going to necessarily be the most effective thing. But when I actually asked them to talk about why they chose to get tested or why they chose not to get tested, the conversation that came up the most in both cases was conversation with their doctor. And it was as simple as a doctor saying, hey, Devin, we're going to do some blood tests. How about we run an HIV panel? You're in for your annual exam. When was the last time you were tested? That's all the conversation needs to be. It doesn't have to be this big thing. And the CDC in 2006 says that doctors have to ask these things, but they're not, because it's awkward, and it's just as awkward for doctors. Other studies have said it's just as awkward for doctors to bring up this topic. They don't want their patients to think that they're being judged, and so they don't want to offer it. That's dangerous, because at the same time, that same group of students, the ones that said they hadn't been tested for an STI or HIV yet, they reported that they didn't think they needed to, because when they went to their doctor never offered it.
Wow.
And the comment that stuck out with me is, if I needed one, my doctor would have told me. So they're assuming this is giving them vindication. Like, well, I don't have to worry about it, because if I needed to, my doctor would have told me. No, your doctor didn't bring it up to you because either they don't see you as being someone at risk because they don't know what you're doing, or they were just as embarrassed to bring it up as you were. And that's really, really dangerous. So that kind of leads to the second project that's under review right now. So it's asking numbers to speak, modern applications of stages of change. And this paper is looking at this idea that when engaging in risky behaviors, there's 6 stages kind of accepted. There's the pre-contemplation, where I don't even think about this at all. Like, I don't have to worry about that. So when smoking conversations come up on commercials and whatnot, I would be in pre-contemplation because I've never smoked a cigarette in my entire life. So that doesn't faze me because I'm not engaged in that risky behavior. Sometimes you can be engaged in risky behavior, but you're invincible, so nothing's ever going to happen to me. And most of our college students kind of fall in that pre-contemplation. The next stage is contemplation, where it's like, well, I think about it. Maybe I need to worry about it, but I'm not quite convinced that I need to do something about it yet. And then it goes on until you reach action, where you actually go and you're doing something, and then finally maintenance and termination, where you don't have to worry about it anymore. And more recent research in this area, that its termination has been changed to relapse, because there is the likelihood that if you're on a diet and you're doing really well on your diet, and then somebody comes in with, birthday cupcakes, you're like, oh, I'm going to have that cupcake. And then you feel bad and you have to go through some of those stages again. So what I'm interested in is, how do we move somebody from one stage to the next? And what roles could doctors have? And the way that we've looked at stages of change previously, it's, these worksheets and these scales, and it's kind of complicated, and doctors don't have time for that. Patients don't have time for that. So we need to simplify how we can identify where somebody is. So in some other research that I was doing, I had asked students about quantitatively where they were in these 6 stages, and then I picked people from each of the stages and interviewed them, and started noticing in the interviews that people that were at certain stages kind of use the same language. And so I did some more reading, and cues to action is a way when you can listen to somebody's conversation, you can identify what you might be able to say later. And I thought that was really interesting. So it's like, okay, well, I've got these stages, I've got these interviews. Maybe there's a way that we could use counseling to ask participants questions to help them along with this. And so I looked in sociology and psychology and found that there's a very well-known, very well-respected method of counseling called motivational interviewing. And in this case, you're asking your patient or client questions, very non-judgmental. It is completely about them thinking and reflecting on things. And I noticed that if I could ask a student so simply, tell me about your risk, tell me about your perceptions of risk, not necessarily about you, but just in general, what do you think of this? How you answer that question from what I've done preliminary put you in one of three categories: pre-contemplation, contemplation, or action. So I collapsed the 6 into 3. And so now what we're doing, I'm working with 2 other professors, one in psychology, and then the other one is in the PA program, the Physician's Assistance program. And we are combining our efforts, and we're actually going to retest this whole motivational interviewing stages of change project here at Mount Union coming up this fall once we go through IRB and all of the wonderful revisions and things like that. So we're going to start launching it. We're going to test to see if that actually works here, if we're seeing the same kind of patterns. So we're going to pilot it out. Then we're going to start the second stage of this is we're going to start training PAs how to use this new mechanism of modified motivational interviewing and have them test it out and see if they get the same kind of results. Then the third stage will be eventually to actually start working with doctors in local clinics and hospitals and train them. I have some people over in Washington, D.C. that are also doing some counseling, and they've been using motivational interviewing, and they've already agreed to take my modified version and possibly start working it out there too. So we've got some really cool options, but I'm still nervous about this baby because I need to make sure that it actually works. But it's got some really huge impact potential that I'm really, really excited about.
I just like how passionate you are about this. It's really fun to see. Obviously, I see lots of professors in their academic settings, but it's a whole new ball game when you take them out and you start talking to them about like what they're doing outside of the classroom and what they're actually tinkering with. You don't ever see them in their natural
our natural environments.
Exactly. And it sounds like this, it's so applied. It's not lofty theory. It's not something that no one can relate to. It's something that can actually be put into action and can actually do something.
Yeah, our team, our research team name is Team Coitus. Dr. Vaughn and Psych came up with this beautiful acronym, Co-Interdisciplinary Team Understanding Sex, or Team Coitus, which just makes us giggle to no end.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I really hope that's a Big Bang reference also.
It is.
Okay, because I know Dr. Vaughn and she loves Big Bang Theory. Yeah. I guess my last thing would be to ask you what sort of classes you will be teaching in the upcoming semesters that you have planned, and if you will be trying to drop little bits of your research into all of these classes.
Oh, yeah. This coming spring, I will be teaching a health communication class, and so that's going to be definitely diving into all things health, which is my baby and my favorite thing to talk about ever. So we'll look at health campaigns, health promotion, intervention. Then we'll also talk about doctor-patient communication, intercultural aspects that you have to take into consideration. We'll talk a little bit about what it means to be healthy and how do we promote health. That's going to be kind of the big driving force of that. I will also be teaching a groups and organization class, so teaching small groups. And it's going to be a good combination of org-com and small group communication. So if you are going to be like most of 80% of college graduates, you're going to have to work in groups and with organizations. So this is a really great class to kind of get you some of that leadership ability and learn how to finally work in a group in a successful manner. I do, as you mentioned, I am very much an applied scholar. I'm also a very applied teacher. So both of those classes, my health class and the OrgCom class, we do things with organizations, and I have my students, find a nonprofit organization and do work with them. So they will have to find an organization around campus that they want to work with. You'll work in a team, but you'll interview those people. You'll talk to them about what kinds of things they might be interested in doing. And then there's a couple different options. I've done it one where you had to do at least 6 hours of service with that organization and actually go to one of their events and help out and volunteer. And then there's papers and stuff that you write. The other way that I've done it is where you basically came up with a proposal to solve a problem that organization had posed. So we really need to raise awareness about getting your cats and dogs spayed and neutered. How could we create a campaign for that? So it kind of depends on who I have in the class, the mixture of people, whether it's going to be more service-oriented or problem solution, kind of coming up with possible PR campaigns or social media stuff. I really like technology and media, so anytime I can bring that in, I'm gonna So there's some options there. And then I'm also going to be continuing with my wonderful, wonderful senior darlings with their senior
Yay.
capstone experience. So I'm very excited to get to have all of you for a whole year. I'm very spoiled.
I'm also excited.
In the fall, I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing for fall, but I'm campaigning to possibly offer a class that is looking at fandom and pop culture, and it would be a course that would be offered in the IC either as a FYS class or as part of a theme. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to fit it in or when it would be coming up, but I'm working on it. And then in communication, they have a media pop culture criticism class that I've been kind of campaigning. I'm like, can I please let me teach that? I like that stuff. So if I can get people to think critically about the media that they are absorbing themselves into. We watch the stuff all the time. We hear messages. We see messages on Facebook all the time. Like media is just around us all the time. And I want people to be far more critical about it. Right now I'm teaching an FYS class called Can You Hear Me Now? Persuasion, Propaganda, and Critical Listening. And the whole class is looking at propaganda in the media and how are we being persuaded and how can we be critical consumers of media. And I think we really need to. We live in a society where we can grab and digest all the stuff that we want and we don't necessarily think critically about it. And that is a problem.
You are preaching to the choir. I'm an integrated media major.
Yep.
So that is my life.
It's your fault.
I'm sorry. But I also have issue with that. You know, I see younger, even older people older than myself who will just share a headline from whether it's BuzzFeed, Thought Catalog, or, you know, any sort of news outlet. And I can't help but think to myself, did you actually read that article? Because the title is just clickbait. That was like one line in that article, and the article said something basically polar opposite of what you are actually trying to convey yourself. So I totally understand. It's one of my pet peeves.
I get into a lot of Facebook discussions with people, and you know, I'm very, very vocal on Facebook, and not in a bad way, but like in an honest way. Like sometimes I will post things just for the sake of getting a conversation started, and oftentimes they are related to, you know, safe sex education and that kind of stuff. But there's other things, you know, about human rights and equal rights and how are we treating people, because we need to take care of each other. You know, my father has a few times accused me of being a socialist because I genuinely want us to take care of each other. And if I have the means to take care of something, then I will. And I was like, well, you know, Dad, if that's what it means, that I want to be a good human being. But, you know, honestly, I'm very faith-based. God plays a big role in my life, and I am a firm believer that I was asked to be a teacher, and my teaching doesn't just happen in the classroom. It happens in every conversation that I have, and if I can engage some people in conversation and actually have honest conversation on Facebook or on Twitter or other media platforms, then I'm going to. And I'm very respectful. I want everyone to be able to share their thoughts and opinions, but I also firmly believe that you don't truly know what you believe until you have to defend it, until you actually have to articulate what is it that you believe. And all of the classes that I teach, all of the research that I do, anytime I'm working with students, I'm always trying to keep that idea at the forefront. I will value and I will support and I will listen to anything anybody has to say, and I will try and find similar commonalities as much as I possibly can. But if you can't articulate what it is that you believe or why you believe what you believe, more so than just, well, my mom said this is what I should believe. Well, your mom might be a wonderful human being, but in order to persuade me, we need more. We need to be able to actually think about it. So we need to be, you know, these critical consumers of the media so that we can support what it is I believe. I'm not just going to throw things up there at random and be like, well, this supports my idea. Well, did you actually read that? Because it's not based on any kind of facts at all.
Exactly.
I tell my students all the time that, you know, I didn't become a doctor. I didn't get this education for ego or anything like that. And I'm not saying that many do, but the only reason I got my doctorate was because I wanted to do this. I wanted to teach. And, you know, some people will, you know, pick on me because I am what I do. It's not just what I do for a day job. It's where I spend my life. I mean, I work in STD clinics when I can and volunteer. Always try and get involved. Stuff that my students are interested in and try and kind of make those connections as much as I can. So I'm really excited about Mount Union because that seems to be really valued and appreciated here, both from students and my colleagues. So it's been a really, really amazing experience. And it's, only been 2 months month in, but I absolutely love it. So you're not getting rid of me anytime soon.
For all of your seniors, it's unfortunate that you came to us so late. So sad.
But then the seniors last year would have possibly said that, and so it's always got to be that one class. But I do. I love it. I absolutely love it here.
So do I. I'll be sad to leave.
Fail, then you don't have to.
Kidding. Oh yeah, that'll look great.
No failing. You're staying. But I haven't said it yet in class, but I probably have. For me, I call my students my kids, not because I think that you're immature little beings, but you become my family. You become my kids. You're not just my students. You become a part of my heart. I worry about you when things are going wrong. When you're sick, I'm like, oh, mama, mama bird wants to take care of her flock. And, once my student, always my student. So whether it's LinkedIn or, Facebook or other mediums, I have students from all over. Some of the high school students that I only worked with 1 year, a couple of them are now off to college, and they send me Facebook messages and they're like, Dr. J, can I email you my paper for this class? Can you take a look at it and make sure that it's right? And I do my very, very best to, to help them out. So, so you're all my kids. So,
well, then you fit in pretty well here. Because Mount Union does have that feel. We have such a wide network of people who belong to that. So you are in the right place.
Agreed. I love it. Go Raiders.
Well, Dr. J, I want to thank you so much for coming in and being my first Mount Union Marvels interviewee. We had such a good conversation, and I hope that you would want to come back sometime while I'm still here so we can talk about how your project is going, and you can keep us updated on how that's going.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
And there you have it. That was the first episode of the new WRMU program, Mount Union Marvels. Tune in next week to hear my interview with Dr. Andrea Ferraro.